I'm not going to draw things on your face. No, no. So what's your name?
My name's Andrew Brown.
Andrew Brown. What's your name?
Oh, I'm Jackie Bodner.
You don't have to film.
You're Jack what?
Jackie Bodner.
Jackie Bodner. Okay. And you guys are from what?
Freedomworks.
Freedomworks. Oh, okay. So that's Dick Armey's group. Is that right? Oh, okay. Cool. Okay. So you guys want to? What's your goal?
Our goal, the drill is a great sign, and that's part of our goal.
Right.
But our real goal is to find an economically smart alternative and a solution to the energy crisis. We recognize that we have a limited supply of oil. Everybody recognizes this.
Right.
And we recognize that you need to find an alternative source of energy to replace oil. And what's going on in Congress right now is Nancy Pelosi called the recess before bills could be presented that present a balanced solution to the energy crisis. Like it or not.
What do you expect from Pelosi?
She's on a book tour.
Pretty much. She's on her book tour. So
Yeah, I know.
We'd
She takes jets too. Can you believe that?
We'd like her to do the people's business, but she obviously doesn't care about being the people's representative.
Right. She takes jets, which emits carbon, and
we're
isn't
not-
she against global? That's so hypocritical, right?
I mean, obviously, yes, but as far as just the issue itself goes,
Right.
we can get into these little arguments, the kind of rhetorical thing, back and forth all we want. But
Right.
as far as the
What's with
relations-
environmentalists even handing out bumper stickers like they're driving cars?
Right. And just for your readers to kind of understand our side and where we're coming from,
Right.
is we fully support finding any alternative. There's no such thing as a bad idea to an alternative to replace
Right.
oil.
Right.
We support, hydrogen power, nuclear power, solar power, wind power, whatever we can do. There's a guy
Right.
dropping propellers in the harbor in New York City generating
Do
electricity.
you
from
prefer
the tidal
coal or
waves.
clean coal?
Clean coal?
Why clean coal if you're looking for every alternative? Why not just coal?
It's cleaner. Obviously, we don't want to rape the environment, contrary to what a lot
You
of
don't
people
want to rape the environment.
No, we don't at all. We want to be smart about it. We're coming at this from an economic perspective.
So you guys
And
are
an
into the
economic-
market, right?
Right.
But so what is
hold on
the
one
market?
second. Can I finish my thought?
Sure.
From an economics perspective, what you need to do is, since our economy is based on oil right now, there's no economically viable alternative to oil right now that is going to be useful for everybody, rich and poor. And so until that can be found, you need to use the supplies that we have that are off limits. 85% of the outer continental shelf is off limits. We know there's oil there. We drill that oil and we beef up our supply to drop the prices a little bit in the short term, while simultaneously encouraging the economy to develop and the free market to develop the alternatives that will eventually replace oil.
How do you encourage the market?
You encourage by allowing the market to function. The oil, we hear this rhetoric all the time about, the oil companies are evil and they're holding off supplies and they're wanting to drive prices up. The oil companies are in the business of producing energy. They know better than anybody else that oil is a limited commodity. And if they're going to continue to make profits into the future, they're going to have to explore alternatives. So it really doesn't make logical sense to say a company is trying not to get alternatives and trying to hold off the supply of oil so they can jack up their profits. Just as any businessman will tell you, he's in the business to make money. In order for them to make money, they need to invest in alternatives, and that's what we're trying to encourage through the free market.
Well,
Lowering regulations.
So what's particularly sort of market oriented about either allowing drilling in public lands or not allowing it? How is one solution market oriented and the other not
Because one
market
solution
oriented?
decreases government regulations. The less regulation that you have on the economy, the more freely that market can function. The less you regulate the economy, the more it can function and the quicker it actually
Well,
develops.
I don't understand. So, on the one hand, you have regulations saying that oil companies can drill in various areas. On the other hand, you have regulations that say they can't drill. How are
You're
they?
misunderstanding. Right now you have regulations that say they can't drill. What we're fighting for is to lift the regulations and saying you may.
But
saying the government's going to step back.
But there are international. Hang on a second. There are international treaties that say you can't drill in international waters.
Actually, it's a
Without-
congressional ban right now as far as the outer continental.
No, I
It's a
understand.
congressional-
I'm doing a thought experiment. So there are, it's not like the oil companies own this land, right? They don't own the outer continental shelf.
Right.
So I don't understand. They're not owning
The
the
outer
areas.
continental shelf region is part of the U.S.
I understand, but they're not. They're like what you're saying is let's drill on public lands, but it's not that the oil companies don't own those
They
lands.
lease those lands from the government.
Right. So why is it that And they pay the government money for those leases. Is that right? So you would be in favor of auctioning off those leases to anybody who wants to drill?
I'd be in favor of deregulating. Well, who's going to drill other than energy companies? Girl Scouts aren't going to drill.
Okay.
People who are going to develop those resources and responsibly develop those resources. Yeah.
Well, but how can you
Absolutely be
ensure that
allowed
they
access to those
responsibly
resources.
develop the resources? I mean, what if you deregulate?
Right.
What do you mean by? Then they could do whatever they want there because you're not in favor of regulations, right?
There are limited regulations.
Wait, so
Limited.
so you want limited
For safety.
regulations? So
For
what
safety.
for safety?
Right.
Okay,
I mean,
so what?
obviously nobody's going to say, go ahead, go do whatever you want.
But isn't that what I mean? Isn't that what you're arguing? Like,
No, I'm not saying
what's
go
the
do whatever
appropriate
you want.
amount of regulation then?
You know what? I'm not a policymaker. I'd say the appropriate amount of regulation would be that which balances the safety needs of the American people, and that would mandate that they drill in an environmentally conscious way, so that there's not accidents. And really, there hasn't been a major oil spill since Exxon Valdez. During Hurricane Katrina, they had reports of these offshore oil rigs being completely blown off their foundations and washing up on the beaches. There's pictures of these oil rigs on the beaches, not a single leak, because the technology has developed to the point where they have these safety measures.
So you want some regulation?
You want responsible regulation.
So you're in favor of responsible
Very
regulation?
limited. You want the market to function as freely as possible. Obviously, there's some regulation that has to be there to prevent abuses.
What kind of standard are you using? Since you guys are ideologically inclined to say less regulation is good, right?
Yeah.
So no regulation is best. But where do you draw the line? I mean, where's your line?
Our line is less regulation.
So
Less regulation, but not, we're not saying a complete anarchy, not complete laissez-faire.
not complete laissez-faire.
It's not complete laissez-faire, it's a free market. It's a free market that's developed responsibly.
So you want a free market that's developed responsibly, that's not laissez-faire. But you want minimal regulations.
Exactly.
Who decides what minimal regulations are?
Those guys do. And
Congress?
The people who vote, the people whose voice is being stifled in Congress right now.
So Congress. You mean? But wait, whose voices are being stifled?
The people who vote.
You're talking about the Republicans.
75% of the American people favor lifting the offshore drilling ban. Yet Nancy Pelosi is closing off the people's house and not allowing the people's voices to be heard because she doesn't vote.
But wait a second. The people who vote on these regulations are the people in Congress, right? We don't live in a democracy. We live in a republic, a representative democracy, right? So you're saying.
In Congress are responsive to the voice of the people.
So you're saying that who decides what minimal regulation is, and you're saying the public?
The public through their representatives.
Okay, but the representatives are doing what representatives do, which is making decisions about.
They're not making decisions right now. It's closed off.
Well, I mean
There's
that's
no
a decision.
decisions
I mean that's a
being made.
decision to go back to their constituents
Yeah,
and
we'll see in
talk
November
to.
how that decision pays off.
Well, I mean we will, but what I'm sort of wondering from your perspective, who's supposed to make this decision about minimal regulation? I mean, Speaker Pelosi is the Speaker of the House of Representatives, elected by people of San Francisco, and also the majority leader elected by House Democrats who've chosen her as their leader.
Right.
And they're all elected by
So
the
she
public.
should have the ultimate decision? Is that what you're telling me? Because
Well,
she's Speaker of the House. She has the ultimate decision.
About controlling the schedule, and that's a decision made by the majority party, and that the majority party is elected by the public.
So what you're saying is that she's essentially the Empress, and she just needs to...
No. What I'm asking is, I'm saying she's elected by the public, and essentially through proxies. And so,
She's
in
elected
terms
by
of the
people
person
San
that
Francisco,
decides
yeah.
the,
And I mean, there's a pretty strong argument that the people of San Francisco don't represent the majority of the American public.
that's true because San Francisco isn't the majority of the American public, and
And-
in fact, George Bush wasn't elected representing the majority of the American public in 2000, which meant, but he was still president. So we don't actually live in a direct democracy. So there's clearly some. I mean, clearly you're making an argument that maybe we should live in a direct democracy, but we don't.
No, I'm not making that argument at all. I'm
so we
making the
shouldn't
argument
live-
that we follow the Constitution.
Okay, and how is what Nancy Pelosi's doing not following the Constitution?
She's stifling the voice of the public.
But the
Here's the problem. This is the essential thing. The number one issue facing our economy right now is energy prices. That's the most important issue to just about every American you'll talk to. The number one thing on their mind is energy prices.
Okay,
There
so
were bills